Now, over Christmas and the New Year on OS, we're going to be looking back on the year of 2020 that most of us, well, we're just quite frankly going to remember it as a pandemic year. But it was a year ago in December when a Chinese doctor, Li Wenliang, at Wuhan Central Hospital, tried to warn fellow medics about a possible outbreak of a new disease. You may well remember the video that came out about that, but he was told to stop making false comments. Well, in January, the virus started to spread across the world, and of course by March, the World Health Organization had declared a global pandemic. Dr. Li himself died in February whilst treating patients with the virus. Well, our China media analyst Kerry Allen has been a regular guest here on OS, telling us the story that's been playing out in China. I'm pleased to say she's back with us to have a good old look back on the year. Thanks for being with us, Kerry.
Hey, Chloe.
So remind us, if we go back a year, what are your recollections of those first reports coming out of China, coming out of Wuhan, of this mystery virus?
Well, we didn't really hear anything in late December. I mean, bear in mind, actually, at that time, a lot of China specialists like myself were actually covering the Hong Kong protests, and that was a major story that lasted for a good 6 months. But it was only, I would say, around kind of mid-January when we started to hear that things were changing quite rapidly. I mean, early January, we heard that a few people were getting sick in Wuhan, but at that time, I mean, it's winter, people do get sick, and China does have huge populations, and Wuhan is a city of 11 million people. So it didn't seem like a big story at the time. And in fact, actually, the first interview I did on this was 16th of January, with you guys on OS, and even then it was a minor story. We didn't really think that it would be the situation we have today, a global pandemic.
When did you get a sense from people, your contacts in China, that this was different, this was going to be a problem?
Very, very quickly. I would say, within days after the 16th of January, I remember talking to friends out in Shanghai where I used to live and asking them, are you okay? I'm hearing of this spreading to other places. And I remember one of my friends saying to me, we can't buy masks. And in China, I mean, one of the things that's quite normal, even going back a decade, is in winter, you will see people wearing masks anyway, very much as a learning point from SARS back in 2003. So, and China's got a huge manufacturing industry. So if anywhere is going to be mass manufacturing masks, it's China. So hearing from my friends that they couldn't buy masks and they were asking me, could you send some over from the UK? That for me was a heart-stopping moment of, wow, this is really quite serious. And yeah, the cases at this point we were hearing by the day, there were literally climbing by the thousands, that, you know, more and more people just each day were being confirmed with COVID-19, and the death rate increased very, very dramatically as well in Wuhan. So around January, it was a heart-stopping time. We hadn't seen anything like this ever. We didn't know what was going to happen.
And let's talk about the response in Wuhan, because it was fast. It was very strict. I mean, I remember the first time seeing the images on TV of people in sort of full head-to-toe PPE, literally dragging people out and forcibly removing them from places. When we look at how Wuhan dealt with that initially, can it be seen as a success, or as some people say now, do we get a sense that we don't know the true picture of what happened there?
I think both. I mean, it is a success that China has managed to get this under control, particularly in Wuhan. I mean, at its peak, there were 50,000 cases in Wuhan, and literally within weeks, when they were in the 10,000s of cases, the government said, we're going to build 2 hospitals that are going to provide 2,000 extra beds. And they did this within a fortnight, within 2 weeks. So suddenly these new hospitals were built. And yeah, bearing in mind China's huge population, it had the capacity to send medical workers from different areas. So thousands of doctors, thousands of nurses piled into the city to work at these extra hospitals. There's very few places in the world where that can happen. So yeah, in a sense, that is a success. But at the same time, there were major criticisms, both from internationally and domestically, very much targeted towards how the Wuhan authorities handled this in the first place. I mean, in China, there is a lot of bureaucracy, so people got the sense that local governments were not acting fast enough. They were waiting for a message from with the higher powers. And the timing of this, it was close to Chinese New Year. So it's meant to be kind of like Christmas. It's a time where everybody gets together and celebrates. It's a really happy time. And with this cloud hanging over China, the people in Wuhan didn't really want to disrupt that, so they left it too late. People do have that sense in China that local officials should have acted faster.
And now, what sort of measures are in place? I mean, I'm just thinking about what's happening in the US right now, lockdowns across Europe. In China, are there any restrictions, and how many cases are there?
Well, there have only been 2 cases in the last 24 hours out of 1.4 billion people. So wow. China very much has this under control. And what it's managed to do in order to prevent localized outbreaks is the moment it hears of asymptomatic cases. I mean, there are people in high-risk industries who are tested regularly. So people who work at airports, at ports. China has the sense that it's detected COVID-19 on cold chain products, so these people are being tested regularly. And if a person tests positive without symptoms, very, very quickly, anybody they've been in contact with is tested, anybody who lives in that vicinity. The moment a person becomes symptomatic. I mean, this actually happened this week in one city in northeastern China, a place called Dalian. One person developed symptoms and the whole city is going to get tested. But very quickly, roads were shut down. People were told, if you visited this restaurant in recent days, go and get tested. If you're linked to this person in any way, if you're on this street, get tested. And a lot of people in China live in apartments in urban cities, and these are within kind of gated communities. So it's very, very easy to just quickly set up a barrier so that people can't go in and out. And locals provide food that kind of goes into apartment buildings. So there's a real sense of community spirit. It's not just that people go into strict lockdown. There's a whole system in place that makes sure that places can shut down, but that people can get the support they need so they can get food and they can get medicine.
So some lessons can be learnt by countries around the world from the way that China dealt with it. I mean, we often talk about the coverage in the Chinese media about things not being fully reported, not properly being reported, being delayed. Do you think anything has changed with the media and any level of transparency because of this pandemic?
Yes, I do think so, yes. I think there have been some positives and I think there have been some negatives. So, I mean, because China has such a strict enclosed media environment, there was one shared message that this virus is extremely serious. And people knew where to look as a result of that. So they knew to look at People's Daily, the government newspaper. They knew to watch CCTV for any updates. And, I mean, I've been looking at this since the beginning of the year. It's very clear that those same outlets are providing a message each day of whether are confirmed symptomatic cases, asymptomatic cases, suspected cases. Literally, people have a one-stop shop for knowing where they go to get information, and that has been very good. But at the same time, when we think back to Wuhan, there were a number of citizen journalists who tried to provide the picture there of what they were seeing on the ground. And some of these have been arrested and they haven't been seen since, actually. I mean, there's going to be one journalist who's going to be standing trial, Zhang Jian, by the end of the year. And she might get prison time because she was trying to get a message out to the West. So, I mean, in one instance, it's been good as a form of informing people about what is going on and really getting people to acknowledge that this is a serious virus. But at the same time, China has one message and it's its government's message. And as a result, we may never know the full picture of what happened in those early stages.
And one thing some people suggest around the world is that actually this was actually in a Chinese laboratory and it escaped. It was made by the Chinese and somehow managed to escape. And I know lots of people have conspiracy theories about this, but it is interesting that the World Health Organization team is going to be allowed into China to investigate the origins. I mean, that's quite unusual, isn't it?
I think this whole year's been unusual.
True.
But I think, I mean, China has wanted to say in recent months throughout that it's been cooperative with the World Health Organization because it's been so transparent each day in the number of cases it's got and also how fast it's been in introducing new measures in tackling the coronavirus. With regards to the visit next month, there hasn't been a lot of media coverage on this. I mean, China has said that it's not going to be some kind of gotcha moment that people are going to suddenly discover that this happened, it was developed in a Chinese lab. And they've actually been highlighting where there have been media reports in other parts of the world, like Italy, suggesting that cases predated the discovery in Wuhan. So China's been saying, look, it's not us saying that, it could have happened elsewhere. Even other countries' media are saying it could have been elsewhere before entering Wuhan. And because there have been new cases that have been detected linked to seafood and the cold chain, China's saying that's very possible that might be what happened here, that it might have been a seafood product. I mean, there were a number of cases in the very early stages that were linked to the Huanan seafood wholesale market. So China's saying it's entirely possible that might have been what's happened here. That, yeah, we heard the first case in Wuhan, but I mean, we still don't know a lot about this virus, and it might be that people misdiagnosed. They might have thought what they were seeing was a different strain of just pneumonia, when in fact, this was what we have today, this COVID-19.
Kerry, good to speak to you as ever. That's our China media analyst, Kerry Allen.